right, in 3, 2, 1. Welcome to Vigilant News Interviews. For our guest today, we have Etienne de la Boetie². He is the nom de plume of a voluntaryist, author, father, technology, entrepreneur, cyclist, runner, hot yogi, and multi-disciplinarian truther, armchair economist, my personal favorite, cryptocurrency enthusiast, and neo-abolitionist, abolitionist, who is experimenting with large-scale cult deprogramming. Mr. Boetie² distills 20 years of research into short, easily digestible treatises on individual subjects and optimizes them for 65% of society who are visual learners. Boetie includes references and links to more comprehensive research in the authentic voices of the developing alternative media. Mr. Boetie² is the founder of a startup public policy organization, the Art of Liberty Foundation, that is developing voluntary and free market solutions to social issues while exposing the illegitimacy and criminality of government and the hidden curriculum of the organized crime, mandatory government schools, and scouting programs and police/military training. Welcome to the show.
Great to be with you and your audience, Justin.
Yeah, and hopefully I didn't butcher your name too bad.
No, you did great. Yeah,
right
some people forget the squared, and so the two at the end is so people don't think I'm the original, and then that's how you can find me in search engines versus the 16th century French political philosopher, the original Etienne de la Boetie.
Okay. Yeah, when I was looking to find your information, I encountered the OG guy, and you're not him. So cool. Well, I had the pleasure of meeting you at an event we were both at earlier this year, Cause Fest in Nashville area and we had a great conversation. I wanted to bring you on the show because you're into a whole bunch of different subjects. So I just want to give you a chance to kind of unpack a little bit for the audience, like what you're into, what some of your focuses are.
Yeah, so I'm a voluntaryist author, and what I like to say is an organized crime researcher. And the thesis of the book is that government was never really intended to protect life, liberty, and property. It's really best thought of as a technique for robbing and controlling populations. And it's always illegitimate because it's impossible to have a legitimate, moral, logical government. And you can't have you can't do it with a coronation. You can't do it with an election. It's just impossible to do. And so we're essentially tricked into a system that is very easily rigged, that's against our interests, that impoverishes us, that keeps us caught in this, warfare, welfare cycle that, really doesn't produce the goods. And so the good news message of the book and of what we do is, one of the tenets of voluntarism is that, you don't really need government. And so if you think about it, government's just this provider of services, mostly besides redistribution, which is immoral. Everything the government does would be done better, faster, and cheaper by the free market, by the mutual aid societies, nonprofits, co-ops, insurance companies, homeowners associations, real, genuine charities. And the government just gets in the way, has all these unintended consequences, ruins everything, claims monopoly privileges over everything from passenger train service to delivering the mail, which, causes a whole host of other issues. And so the good news message of the book is that, we're not allowed to see, we really just don't need government. And then the final thing I'd say is the subtitle is How Intergenerational Organized Crime Runs the Government, the Media, and Academia. And so what we were exposing in the book is that it's government working with monopoly media and monopolized academia, where they're controlling the information that society receives, either through the mandatory government school program, so that you never ever hear, like a lot of people have never ever heard of voluntarism. They've never encountered these ideas because they're being censored to keep people trapped in this government paradigm where they can be robbed and controlled and tax farmed and stolen from. And so it's intergenerational organized crime that's been running the government, the media, and academia, and in kind of concert to tax farm the population.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, lots to unpack there. But I think maybe we should start off with one of the obvious things that you probably hear a lot is, and when you start to talk about not needing government, which is, well, wait a minute, hey, doesn't government serve legitimate purpose? Should we be getting rid of this? Who's going to pave our roads? Who's going to calculate our taxes? All that kind of stuff. Do you want to respond to that?
Well, in a voluntarist world, you don't have any taxes, so you don't have to pay either the taxman or the guy that figures out how much taxes you owe. But really, everything that, as I mentioned, everything that government does, is essentially a provider of services. And absent the government, because, there is a market for people to get from point A to point B, and because there is a market for armed protective services, and there is a market for delivering the mail, and there is a market for air traffic control, and there is, Canada privatized their air traffic control decades ago, and there's not planes dropping out of the sky in Canada. And so really everything the government does, because people want to be safe and secure in their homes, there is a market for armed protective services. There is people need dispute resolution, and the majority of dispute resolution is actually settled today through private arbitration in much more efficient ways than the government does. And in fact, many attorneys are advised it's almost malpractice if you're not, advising your clients to agree to private arbitration beforehand. So like if you're actually allowing them to go into the crooked, corrupt, inefficient, government court system, you could, it's almost malpractice and right. to put people through that. And so, everything that government does would be done better, faster, cheaper. We wouldn't need the same defense capabilities if it wasn't for government. And if we throw off government in the United States, if we're the first nation that cuts through the propaganda matrix of, monopolized media and the algorithmic censorship of the internet and widely exposes the scam of government, the illegitimacy and the criminality of it, and we get rid of government here in the United States and we begin privatizing everything, I'll tell you that I think the Chinese and the Russians are going to do the exact same thing, because it's not United States versus Russia or United States versus China. It's the people of the United States versus the government of the United States. It's the people of Russia versus the government of Russia. It's the people of China versus the government of China. The government of China is using the scam of government to rob their people. The Russians are using this. There's, intergenerational organized crime interests in Russia that are using the control mechanism of government to tax farm their population. And once one of these slave plantations rebels and overthrows government, you're going to see it come down in Russia and China and everywhere else in short order, because nobody likes to get played, nobody likes to get chumped. And once it's widely understood how the scam works, I think most people are going to go, I'm out. And so you're not going to need the same military or the same defense capabilities, because there's just not a threat. I mean, we're not, the Chinese people and the American people have no desire to go to war with each other at all. It really is governments that are maneuvering these, producing these crises and disputes because they're either stealing resources or they're trying to colonize different places, or they're in trade disputes where moneyed interests are paying off the government to institute taxes or tariffs or whatever it is. And so once you get rid of government, you get rid of all of that stuff that requires us having a military, because nobody really wants to go to war. Everybody just wants to be happy, make money, spend time with your family, and government is just is in the way of the pursuit of happiness these days.
Mm-hmm. Many of you have heard us talking about our sponsor, Ascent Nutrition, over the previous months, and we'd like to announce that they are offering 20% off all products for the entire month of November, only for Badlanders. With the fall and winter approaching, now's the time to get their pine needle extract, organic mushrooms, and humic acid. These are foundational nutrients for detox, immune, and respiratory support this winter. It's great for detoxification, immune, respiratory, brain, and gut health, and is safe for both kids and adults. If you haven't tried Ascent Nutrition's products yet, or even if you have, now is the time to load up on what they have to offer. Ascent Nutrition personally thanks all of the customers that have come in through us here at Badlands and welcomes all those that are new customers. They are offering Badlanders 20% off all products through the end of November at badlandsmedia.tv/ascent and by using the code BADLANDS20 at checkout. That's badlandsmedia.tv/ascent, promo code BADLANDS20. Skyrocketing inflation? Endless war? $31 trillion in debt? $4.7 trillion in new proposed taxes? This government just won't stop. Now they're hiring thousands of new gun-carrying IRS agents in all 50 states. I wonder what for. The truth is, things could get a whole lot worse if you're not protected. That's why we've partnered with the top-rated precious metals company, Goldco. Goldco has helped people like you and me place over $1 billion in gold and silver. For those with retirement accounts, they're offering Vigilant News supporters up to $10,000 in free silver when opening a qualified IRA account. For cash buyers, you're going to love this. You can get bonus silver just for making a purchase. If you buy $15,000 worth of precious metals, you'll get $750 in bonus silver. If you buy $25,000, you'll get $1,250. This is your opportunity to protect yourself from our out-of-control corrupt government. Go to badlandsgold.com to learn how you can get started today. That's badlandsgold.com. Yeah, one of the things that I had to come to terms with when I started researching this subject was just how much we had been psyoped or conned into thinking we need something we do not need. Government is a pretty good example. If I can use an analogy, and I'll ask you what you think about this. Likening our need for government to our need to get benefits from somebody who's kidnapped us and put us in a basement for 20 years. I mean, it's kind of like that. Like, if you spend 20 years in somebody's basement who kidnapped you, you're going to develop Stockholm syndrome, and you'll actually believe you need the services they're providing you.
Oh, yeah.
Ultimately they've kidnapped you, they're enslaving you, they're taking your rights away, and they're giving you some brownie points or a few trinkets here and there to keep you happy. So, that's one of the big things. And the other big thing is how much whatever we think government can do that we can't do is a lie. The government are just people. They're just people attempting to organize to do things just like any other person, except certainly the government would have on Earth today. The governments we have on Earth today are hijacks. They're parasitic governments. They're not, I wouldn't even necessarily call them governments in a normal sense, because if we go to the lawful definition of government, and I wanted to ask you about this, the governments are instituted by men to protect and serve their rights. And when a government seeks to take away a citizen's rights without due process, that's not really a government anymore. It ceases to be that when it's not lawful. So any thoughts on that?
Yeah. So, in addition, first of all, I don't think there's a way of, so I use the term governance. You can have governance without having government. And so really the difference of, what Washington D.C. is claiming is they're saying, hey, we have a monopoly of violence over the geographic area of the United States because hundreds and hundreds of years ago, 4 to 5 dozen slave owners on a continent of 3 million people, got together in a room and they wrote down on a fancy piece of paper that they alone get to make up rules for everybody and steal the wealth of others. And then they had the newspapers of the time, which they owned, proclaim that it was valid. And they began tricking the population into this belief system. So government means gubernare, to govern or control, mente, the mind. So control the mind. So it's a kind of mind control. And so they've been controlling the information the population receives to indoctrinate the belief in government, not just as, something civic, but as something holy. as something that's, it's the technical term is statism, and it's the belief, the indoctrinated belief in the legitimacy, the desirability, and the necessity of having a government. And they've been doing that through not just the mandatory government school system, but in partnership with this monopoly media system. They've been weaving messages and propaganda into television shows and movies in a kind of very conscious, kind of a cult indoctrination system to get people religiously attached to having a government and looking at government as a father figure. So the president is the pope. You're going to go to the church school where the teacher, the priest, is going to teach you the common prayer of the Pledge of Allegiance and teach you the hymns of the national anthem and the Star-Spangled Banner. And they're going to take you to Mecca, Washington, D.C., government land, kind of in middle school. And they're going to take you into the Capitol that looks like the Vatican for a reason, and everything's going to be large and oversized, and you're going to feel small and insignificant. And they're going to take you to the temples in Washington, D.C. on the Potomac, and they're going to show you the deities of Jefferson and Lincoln, and it's going to be very, very hushed and very, very reverent. And they're going to wear robes, vestments. Judges will wear vestments, and they're going to sit on high above you, and they're going to trick you with language and admiralty law and things like that. And so, once people realize, hey, it's a system, it's a playbook, it's like a little, catalog of tricks that they're running on the population to get them religiously invested in having a government. Well, nobody likes to be chumped. Nobody likes to be tricked. Nobody likes to be fooled. And so once people, realize that that's going on, I'm out of here.
Right. Yeah, that is something that's a little jarring, because a lot of the things you just rattled off, most people anyway, have a pretty good emotional response to. I'll be the first to admit I like hearing the sound of the national anthem. Yeah. But there's a key distinction that I think I want to highlight for people. It's not that these things are inherently bad. It's that they are used as propaganda tools to manipulate you into accepting and engaging with something that you didn't really have a fair a chance to critically assess. Mm-hmm. Because ultimately, I'll ask you this. I think all of this rests on a foundation of contract law and trust. Mm-hmm. If you're going to engage in a contract, there's certain standards that have to be met in order for that contract to be lawful and honorable, meaning that you actually consented, you knew what you were agreeing to. Right. And if they're using, like you were just saying, judges sitting on high, big megalithic structures that create an emotional feeling of reverence, acceptance, mm-hmm. wanting to fit in, that you're making the choice for other reasons than, does this government serve me? Are they protecting my rights? Are they honorable? Can they be trusted? Things like this. Would you agree with that? Yeah.
Oh, 100%. So there is no social contract that you've signed. They just forced it on the entire country. The Constitution is just forced on everybody, generation after generation after generation, even though this generation or the last generation or the generation, nobody agreed to it. It's just everybody's expected to be a party to it. But I want to go back, because you brought up something really important, like that you get that, that feel good when you hear the national anthem. And let's just talk about why people get that feel good when they see the flag or the national anthem. And it goes back to, it completely makes my point, is because they're running game and trickery on people. And so many people don't realize this, but when you go to stadium events, football games, NBA, the National Hockey Association, baseball, and they're doing that national anthem, they're doing it to trick you into that feel-good feeling. And so you're outside, you're in the sunlight, you've had a couple of beers, you feel great. And in advertising, the technique is called anchoring. Okay. And so they're going to play a snappy jingle while they, of a popular song, when they show you the Coca-Cola logo or the Pepsi logo or the Red Bull logo or whatever it is, so that when you hear that song, you associate that, happy thing with Red Bull or with Coca-Cola or with Pepsi or whatever it is. And so they're doing the exact same game at the national anthem. And one of the things that kind of proves my thesis, and one of the reasons that you know that it's fake, is the government is paying for it. And so a couple of years ago, the budget was $53 million a year. And we've got all of the evidence in government, the biggest scam in history exposed. And in our flash drive, the Liberator that we use to back up all of the information on the book. But the government was spending $53 million a year for the flyovers, for the, the flag worship ceremonies at the stadium. So they're getting people when they're all having a great time, and then they're playing that snappy jingle for you. Mm-hmm. And now you're linking up in your mind every time you hear that, the good times that you were having. They're also using the technique. They're weaving it into movies and television shows. And so, a couple of examples that I like to use is if you've ever seen The Martian with Matt Damon, he's building up to, hey, is he going to get off of Mars? No, something went wrong. He's not going to make it. No, he is going to make it. He's going to make it. Yes, he's off of Mars. And boom, they come to Earth and everybody's waving American flags. And then they cut to Mission Control and there's giant American flags on the, on the backboards. Top Gun Maverick, there's got to be 5,000 flags in Top Gun Maverick. In Superman movies, Superman's carrying the American flag and flying around the world with the American flag. In Rocky, he's got, after he wins, he drapes himself in the American flag and he's wearing the American flag shorts. They're playing you. They're running game on the population. It's government and Hollywood working together to convince people to invest themselves religiously into something that isn't in their interest.
Mm-hmm. Well, okay, so I'm going to ask the question I'm sure a lot of people are thinking right now, because you're making a really good point, and I don't want people to dismiss this because of the investment they feel with the good feelings they get from these things. Mm-hmm. Surely feeling good about your country isn't a bad thing. Like if I see the American flag and I feel good, and mm-hmm. I have, veterans or people of good things that have happened, arguably, that mm-hmm. we can put on the table and say, hey, I can associate these with my flag, with my country. Is that in and of itself a bad thing, or is it that it's weaponized that's a bad thing?
I would argue that the country is an artificial tribe that they're tricking you into self-identifying into this artificial tribe. But the reality of the matter is that, I'm in Sedona, Arizona right now. There's very little, the people of Arizona have very little in common with the people in Maine. The people in Maine have very little common with the people of Hawaii. The people of Hawaii have very little in common with the people of Alaska. And so they're, like I'm not an American. I'm just a peaceful human being that lives on this planet. I'm not in a gang. Just because you're born in Compton doesn't mean you have to be a Crip. Just because you're born in East LA doesn't mean you have to be a Blood. Just because the government is trying to trick you into self-identifying as an American so that you feel like you owe them money, that doesn't make it so. Your real tribe are your friends and your family and your neighbors and your real community. That's your real tribe. And so, I would consider myself much more a Texan before I would consider myself, an American. And then, even though I was born in Texas, I grew up in Fort Worth. And so it would be my family first, then Fort Worth. Those are my real tribes. And so right now I live in Sedona. I'm in the tribe of Sedona, freedom-loving people that don't believe, a lot of whom don't believe in government, don't believe, know that we're getting scammed and robbed and that. And we're trying to work together to have, there's a, community gardens and a liberty movement here, and we're working together. And so you can voluntarily get together with your community. You can voluntarily organize. You can have everything that government does without the you have to do it or we're going to hurt you. And we've got this bunch of goons with shaved heads and guns and uniforms that we've been running unethically manipulative techniques on since the Cub Scouts, the Boy Scouts, the Explorers, the JROTC, the ROTC, and police and military training, to where they're going to use violence on you to enforce our edicts and to get your money if you're not willing to pay. I don't want to be part of that system. I want to be in this voluntary system with cool people that actually live around me. And like, we're not involved in what's going on in DC. We're trying to solve the problems locally using voluntary solutions. We're not advocating violence on anybody. We're not voting to rob our neighbors. We're not doing any of that. We're getting together voluntarily. And as I say this, we're having a Liberty event in Sedona on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And so we're really doing it. We're building community, and we're trying to, voluntary solutions. We're not advocating violence on our neighbors. We're saying, hey, that system is corrupt. That system's a trick. We need to come over here and do it ourselves, because we can't really expect Washington, D.C. to do anything for us. And in fact, they're robbing us. They're taking our money. Even if you believe that there is a government, most people would say, yeah, Washington, D.C. is corrupt. They're stealing money. They're, selling influence. They're insider trading. They're involved in this host of crimes that's not involved in helping us at all. We're just getting robbed by Washington, D.C. Whether you believe in government or not, we've got an organized crime problem in government in Washington, D.C. And that's one of the things the Art of Liberty Foundation is kind of unique in, is we're saying, hey, not only is government illegitimate, but it's 100% hijacked by organized crime in Washington, D.C. We're getting robbed. They're stealing trillions, and they're in bed with the media, says the media isn't telling us what's going on. And that's very, very unique in public policy organizations in Washington, D.C. or anywhere else in the country.
Right. Okay, so I think I can get to what the point I'm trying to make, and you just made by describing this. You're describing family, that we have a connection to our family, our tribe, these things. And if let's say we don't do this anymore, but if your family had like a family song that they wrote and they passed from generation to generation, and that song, when you heard it, filled you with all this reverence and joy and love for your family, it'd be kind of an equivalency to the national anthem, right? However, your family is, the quality of your relationship with your family is fundamentally different than the quality of your relationship with this thing that we call government. Your family, you can trust, you can talk to if, something goes wrong, and be like, hey man, we got to work this out. And you can probably get things worked out, and they'll respect and defend your rights. Right. But this other relationship that we have, where effectively, and I know this is going to potentially rub some people the wrong way, but we weren't asked to be citizens of the United States. It was forced upon us. It was forced upon us by our parents. It was forced upon us by our townships. It was forced upon us by the IRS and the Social Security Administration. So, and we're
tricked into it, where they're running game. They're running unethically, classic textbook, unethically manipulative, what I would call cult indoctrination techniques. There's no other word for it. That's the stone cold truth. Is they're running game on us, okay? And that system continues, and they're doing it openly. They're trying to trick you into that self-identification. And so that really is that's the stone cold problem right there, is that we've got an organized crime government running that controls the media and the academia, and they're using unethically manipulative techniques on children to get them to religiously adopt a belief system that is against their interest.
Right. So if any other situation, I bet you if we asked somebody if they're in a relationship, or they had a friend who was stealing from them, lying to them, manipulating behind their back, talking about, they want to have sex with their wife, all sorts of really shady stuff, you'd probably drop your friend like a bad habit in a minute. But you can't do that with your government, so I want to the reason I'm beating that horse so dead is because, my audience is very patriotic. They want to, see the country and, end this insanity that we've been dealing with here. So as soon as they hear stuff like this, they're going to be like, wait a minute, hold on a second. Don't you come across my country. And I think there's two things to sauce out from here. All the good things that we've gotten from whether it's the founding fathers, the service people in the military who defended us in World War II, whatever thing you can think of to put on the table that like, hey, this is a good thing. That's fine. There's a concept called severability in philosophy, epistemology, and law, which is that when something good happens or is correct, it's still good and correct, even if it's linked with something that isn't.
Yeah.
You know, we have to be able to acknowledge the fact that the government has been hijacked. They use mind control techniques on the people. They've been doing it for years. They steal from us. They take our kids. They destroy lives all the time. And we have to acknowledge those things if we want to fix the situation at all. So I'm glad we got that squared away.
Yep.
Okay, so earlier you were talking about governance, and I wanted to speak a little bit to that because when there's a difference between governance and government. Can you speak to that for a moment?
Sure. So the example I like to use the most is the homeowners association, and the homeowners association is an example where you can have rules without rulers. Okay. So, I used to live in Ashburn, Virginia, which had one of the largest kind of planned communities in the country. I think there was 5,000 plus single family homes plus townhomes in an area where we had swimming pools. We had an amazing sports pavilion that had, a tennis bubble. We had covered tennis courts and outdoor tennis courts and racquetball courts and an indoor pool and probably 7 outdoor pools. And so we had all of the amenities that a lot of times like towns and things provide, but they do it at the point of a gun. Well, you did it, voluntarily. Like you don't have to live, like you could live in Ashburn and not live in Ashburn Village. You could live in a different equivalent of Ashburn Village. There's a planned community in Reston right down the way. But nobody's like forcing the rules of the homeowners association, on other people outside of the homeowners association. But if you do want to subscribe to the rules, so you can't paint your house pink, you can't have 3 dead cars in your front yard. You got to keep the lawns up to keep everybody's property values up. If you say, hey, yeah, that's exactly what I want, well, you can buy into that community and you can be bound by its rules and by its covenants. And but number one, they don't claim that they have the right to use violence on you if they find out you're gambling, or if they find out that you're smoking a plant that they don't like, or some other victimless crime where governments use violence on peaceful people, for things that aren't really crimes. That's number one. Number two, you can leave. If you get sick of it, or, you inherit the house from your dad and you want to work on your car in your front yard or something like that, you can sell your house, you can leave the community, and you can go out somewhere where you're not going to be bound by those rules. And so that's just kind of like one tiny example of how the market, provides something that lots and lots of things that the government does. And a lot of times in these planned communities, that umbrella includes physical security. So they've got, gated communities where they've got their own, security force that, again, doesn't claim to have rights that you don't have, and claim it can put you in jail for things that aren't really crimes, and can search your car and can do all of the ridiculous things that the mandatory government police do. It is, it is exactly what you want with everything that you don't want.
Right. And so because there's no threat of violence, the need for systems that destroy people's rights doesn't exist. Like if somebody commits a crime in a situation like this, the people in that jurisdiction or that area that they're living, they're the ones who would figure out what to do. And presumably they have a system in place for that. But how would they deal with something like that, do you think?
Well, I mean, so right now at the end of the day, because the police claim a monopoly on the use of violence in every jurisdiction, you end up having to hand the people over to the government because they've claimed that monopoly. Now, if government hadn't been forced on the population, then different things would have arisen, and we could move to different systems. But you could have everything like there's, we've got a whole flash drive that's a companion to the government, the biggest scam in history, exposed, where many different economists have shown ways to have private prisons, to have private dispute resolution, to have armed protective services companies provide everything that the monopoly government is providing right now. And in a lot of cases, there's already examples of this working in society. I use the example of arbitration services do more dispute resolution than the government's court systems. There's also armed protective services companies like Detroit Threat Management that has stepped in where the monopoly government police were failing and are providing policing capabilities in parts of Detroit where the crime is absolutely out of control, and they're doing a better job without violating people's rights and without the violence and the extortion of the system. So people are saying, hey, and I can tell you, I spent some time last year in Memphis, Tennessee, and the policing is so bad in Memphis that every single business in Memphis has to spend money for additional security. Every shopping center that you drive through in Memphis, Tennessee has its own security. So not only are you frequently paying for the service, the monopoly provider where the service sucks, but because because the service sucks, you're having to go and pay a government sucks tax on top of the tax you're already paying to get the services that the government is promising to deliver but isn't.
Right. Yeah. So it makes things way more efficient.
Yes.
And, it reduces the need for crime or the prevalence of crime too. I'm sure you've seen statistics on this, but when communities are proactive about managing themselves, that you get a couple benefits. One, that the guy who's doing the neighborhood watch probably knows the people in the neighborhood and has a lot more social capital to be to actually implement solutions that are going to be more personal and engaging, that kind of thing.
Yep.
And the other thing too is a lot of crime at a psychological level is a person feels like their social tribe that they derive a lot of benefit from isn't serving them properly, and eventually they get vexatious and they decide, well, I'm going to take what I need from the surrounding area. So
that's a great example. And I looked at myself. I wasn't officially in it, but I looked at myself as part of, the neighborhood watch. I've always looked at myself as part of the neighborhood watch. And I remember a time in Ashburn, Virginia, where I ran out some stone cold thieves, a nest, literally some of the local police set up a little nest of motorcycle cops in a parking lot right off of the main drag in Ashburn. And I went out there and I said, hey, what are you guys doing here? I go, we don't want a speed trap in our community. We don't want you robbing, our friends and neighbors. And I let them have it for setting up like a little speed trap in our neighborhood. I ran them off and they never came back.
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah. There you go. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that are currently that manufacture problems. And I'll ask you, I mean, my opinion is that what we have in place right now, I don't really like to use even the term government because it's not really a government. It's more like an organized crime syndicate that has a guise of government. And the reason why that distinction is important is that, this thing that we think we need is not really serving us well, and it's creating way more problems than we think. I mean, the way that we raise our kids means that they're going to grow up with a lot of psychological issues. They're not going to maximize their intelligence capacity, so they're going to be hampered that way. They're going to have a lot of social disturbances, so they're going to have problems the rest of their life from that, not to mention diseases and all these other things. So that just starting the society off at that foundation means you got a whole bunch of issues that you need to then have a government solution to fix. And it makes people think that they need this thing when in reality we don't. So,
I think is just as, I agree with you 100%, but one of the things that I think is just as pernicious is that the government is kind of waging an economic warfare on the population and keeping them artificially poor using a crooked monetary system. And so, here in the United States, the, organized crime banks lobbied and bribed Congress in 1912, 1913 to pass the Federal Reserve Act that allows the banks to engage in something called fractional reserve banking, where they lend money at interest that they created out of thin air. And because that process is inflationary, it's stealing the value out of everybody else's money, and in addition to it being, inherently unfair. And so, like, a lot of people, when they think, well, if there wasn't government, how would I afford school for my kid? Or if there wasn't government, well, how would I afford an armed protective services company? Or, if there wasn't government, how would I afford this or that? Well, if the government wasn't stealing the value out of your money, in addition to all of the overt taxes like the 1040, the income tax, but also all the covert taxes. So, they're covertly taxing you in a variety of ways. Every time you get a gallon of gas, every time you, pay your cell phone bill, every time you pay your cable television bill, every time you fly on a plane, every time you get a hotel room, every time you get a rental car, every time you buy a beer. If you're a smoker, if you smoke cigarettes, you're paying $4, like something ridiculous, like $4 or $5 it's a pack, or it's like crazy robbery. And so if it wasn't for the government stealing the value out of your money and stealing the value out of your pocket, then people would, not to mention the confiscatory taxes like estate taxes and things like that. If the government wasn't robbing everybody, then we would have more than enough wealth to take care of the poor, the needy, the disadvantaged, to replace government 100. But government is keeping people artificially poor so that they can't imagine how they would be able to pay for things in a free society, because the government is stealing out of they're stealing the value out of their money in a kind of economic warfare waged against them. It's tax slavery, where the tax slaves are kept artificially poor so they don't have, or dependent on the government. So even though they know the system is corrupt, they have to keep their job at the school. They have to keep their job at the police station. Even though they see that their colleagues are beating up women on traffic stops, they can't quit because there's no other opportunities, because the government has all of these monopoly privileges, and only it can deliver the mail, and only it can have passenger train service, and only it can do this and that can do that. And so they're stifling the free market. At the same time, they're keeping people artificially poor and stealing all their money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it doesn't take much to fix things. I completely agree about the financial system. As far as I can tell, every vector that exists is weaponized in some way. Mm-hmm. And when it comes to money, that's a huge one. I'm assuming you're familiar with colonial scrib. And
I am.
Okay. I don't. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I want to say they were able to spin up the colonial scrib system, which was the for those of you who don't know, this is the paper fiat currency that the colonists came up with when the British were really making it difficult for them. The British were forcing the colonies to only buy from Britain. They could only use the official coin of the realm at the time, which I believe was a gold shekel or something like that. And it just like it does for us today, back then, it was making the cost of things astronomical, because you had to go through this middleman named Britain. And within 20 years, they spun up a system, colonial scrib, and quickly achieved pretty amazing financial abundance and prosperity within that time. Any comment on that, or how we might be able to use something like that now?
Yeah, so we're forced. So one of the other monopoly privileges the government claims is you're forced to use the government's money instead of having a free market in money. And what a free market in money looks like is kind of like the crypto, market right now, the cryptocurrency market. And so there is no way in a free market system that the market would have, settled on rapidly depreciating fiat-backed paper tickets. Okay. It's no way that they would have done that. And so what we've been forced into is a crooked monetary system where the banks get to create money out of thin air, even though it's stealing the value out of everybody else's money. And there's a couple of examples that I like to use. The first example is, imagine I have $1 and you, dear viewer or listener, have $1, and we have the only $2 in the world. So I own 50% of the world's wealth, and you own 50% of the world's wealth. Well, now imagine a bank comes along and creates, or a government, $2 additional through either fractional reserve banking or through quantitative easing or through stimulus or the printing press or whatever it does. Well, now all of a sudden, the government or the bank has stolen 50% of the world's wealth, and you and I have been reduced by 25% each. We've had 50% of the world's wealth stolen from us, and so that's really the scam of fractional reserve banking. But because the banks can create money out of thin air, the first thing they bought up with their little paper tickets was the media. So the media isn't going to tell you what's really going on. The media is only going to distract and deceive you and try and trick you into wasting your time on things like children's games played by adults.
Right. Yep. And there's plenty of that to go around. Yeah. Okay. So, we're in a situation where there's massive election fraud. There's clearly like all sorts of scams happening all over the place. We also have a situation where, because of the internet and things like this, we've got way more ability to communicate with each other to spin up alternative systems. Do you think that steps can be taken now? And if so, what would those steps look like to start to secure our rights again?
Well, I mean, it's already kind of happening. And so, what I like to say is, it's a one-way revolution. Once people figure out the government is illegitimate and criminal and a scam, and that they've been running the media, and it's the government and the media working together, well, nobody likes to get scammed or chumped or tricked. And so most people are out, and they're not going to fall for the trick again. And so that's really where we're at. We're fighting against this $1 trillion, what I call a control of perception system. So it's a $1 trillion system that's been built up for decades and decades before you and I were even born, that we were kind of born into, that is slowly and surely being exposed. But because you can't stop the signal in the information age, there's ultimately we win in the end, and this is going to be exposed. One of the examples I like to use is this is what we call Liberator flash drive. And it's a completely uncensorable credit card size flash drive that fits into your wallet, that has all of the evidence of government illegitimacy and criminality, where it can't be censored, where you can be over to a friend's house and say, hey, here's what's going on. And once you have one of these, you are both authorized and encouraged to make copies for your friends and your family and your colleagues. And you can see all of it for free at government-scam.com/liberator. You can download it out of the Dropboxes for free. I'm not, we give away everything we are for free. We're trying to, expose an organized crime system that's murdering people and very bad mojo. So you can get it for free, but you can't stop hand-to-hand distribution of the criminality of government and the illegitimacy of government. There's no way to stop the signal. And so it's spreading now. And so if you keep going down, you'll hit the Dropboxes. You can get all of it. You can get everything for free. You can download it to your own flash drives. You can make your own liberators. You can, whatever. That's just one example of why I think we're going to win, because there's no way of stopping the signal in the information age. Hit the documentaries tab, just pop one of those open. All of that can be downloaded for free. Just hit any of those and you can see it's full of documentaries, short videos, government documents that they don't want you to see, viral videos that they're censoring on the internet. And, as far as documentaries goes, we're exposing everything from 9/11 to the Oklahoma City bombing to the Boston bombing. The government's been tricking the population into thinking there's terrorists everywhere and that you've got to give up your rights. And they're just going to warrantlessly wiretap you to protect you from the terrorists. They're not trying to control you and steal your money and rob you or anything like that. And so we've got all of the evidence of massive government criminality in a format that makes it impossible to censor.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I strongly encourage y'all to check this out. Links in the description as usual, everybody. And I managed to get a copy when we were at the conference, and it's really an awesome book. Great coffee table book to just have out there and get people to ask questions. So.
We've got people making that the coffee table book in their Airbnbs. Really? One of the interesting things about the book is it is one of those rare titles that people are buying in bulk. And so over 10% of the copies that we sell are what we call a friends bundle of 5 or 10 copies. And then people send us images and pictures of them donating it to libraries, putting them in little mini libraries in their neighborhoods, making them coffee table books and Airbnbs, making them the backseat book in Ubers or in Lyft rides, things like that. So there's all kinds of ways people are kind of getting the word out. And again, because it's legitimately viral, I don't think there's any way to stop it.
No, definitely not. And that's what's so cool about this information is that it's publicly available and free, and you can just find it anywhere once you look for it. So, getting it in an email list, putting on the flash drive you've gotten is a great way to get it spread. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I wanted to ask you, so we have... there's ideas out there that there might be forces within government, within corporations, all these kind of things, who are so-called white hats, who are trying to do good things. And there's potentially a case to be made for the fact that there is a contingent of folks within government who realize how crazy things are and they're trying to do some good. And any thoughts on any of that? Do you think it's like literally the little man versus this mega beast, and we just have to kind of like go and hide away, or is there things we can do, or any thoughts on any of that? I'm curious.
So I do think that there are good people within government that join for the right reasons. Unfortunately, frequently they are completely outnumbered by this murder incorporated organized crime system that, they'll murder you. And so one of the things we expose in government, the biggest scam in history exposed and on the Liberator flash drive is the incredible number of political assassinations and suspicious deaths and suicides where, government's enemies or whistleblowers or, are found like hanging from their, from doorknobs, or one of the other tricks that the organized crime system likes to do is they like to shoot people in the back of the head on the opposite ear with the non-dominant hands to make it clear that they're killing people. And so, we've got, the good people in government, they're up against the organized crime intelligence agencies that have the get out of jail free card and that are notorious for murdering people. A lot of people don't realize the CIA was running, a extrajudicial system of extrajudicial killing in Vietnam called the Phoenix Program, where they were murdering 10,000 plus people wholesale. They were scooping them up with ARVN teams and CIA teams and just killing them, extrajudicially, no trials, no nothing like that. I mean, we've got an organized crime government that is murdering dissidents and political rivals and and so it's very, very hard for the good people in government to do anything when you've got this murder incorporated intelligence agencies with a gun to everybody's head. They'll make it look like you have child porn on your computer. They'll take pictures of you in what's called a brownstone operation in Washington, D.C., where they'll slip you a roofie. They'll throw you into a room with a little boy or a little girl. They'll take pictures of that. They'll blackmail you that way. Jeffrey Epstein was running kind of like a factory scale brownstone operation where even though the government has, essentially captured his number one accomplice, who are his clients. They won't release the client list because they are the client list, and that's part of the way that they're politically compromised. And so there may be some people in government that are good, but it's hard for them to do anything when they've got this gun to the back of their head in the organized crime intelligence agencies and FBI. The FBI are spooks pretending to be law enforcement, but it's organized crime at the top of the FBI. That's now becoming painfully apparent in what was manufactured against Trump by the intelligence agencies and letters signed by 50 top officials. That's how deep it goes, that you can get 50 top intelligence agency officials to sign a letter to something that's 100% proven false, fake, whatever. Is like, we've got an organized crime intelligence agency that has got their gun to the head of good people in government.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like there are good forces out there, but it's very challenging. Unfortunately, it's hard to know what, if anything, is actually happening out there. I mean, there's some folks that believe that these white hats have so thoroughly dismantled and detoothed the cabal that it's any day now the good guys are going to come riding over the hill. I don't necessarily know. I can't say that that idea doesn't tickle me at least a little bit, but
I've been hearing that for 6 years.
Yeah.
6 years of hearing that. I don't believe it. Like, if it is, then let's see it. Like, put up or shut up. Yeah.
And I've been hearing about Black Hawk helicopters arresting the bad guys and send them to Guantanamo Bay since 2010. Yep. So we're waiting, holding our breath on that one. But there are things that we can do now. And I guess the one question I wanted to ask you is, so what is the solution? Is there a solution to beating this thing? Is it just to try to secure our rights and not poke the bear as much as possible? Like, what are some of the things you're thinking?
We live in dangerous and unstable times. Pandemics, international insecurity, shortages, supply chain disruptions, and an economy on the brink. We know we can't simply trust the government to protect us. Now more than ever, everyone needs to be prepared. Being prepared is more than just stockpiling ammo, food, and supplies. Being prepared should also include stockpiling critical prescription medications. That's where the Wellness Company comes in. The Wellness Company's medical emergency kit contains prescription antibiotics, antivirals, and antiparasites that you need to keep you and your family safe. From anthrax to tick bites, to COVID, and even a bioweapon like the plague, the medical company's medical emergency kit is exactly what you need to have on hand to be prepared. Go to badlandsmedia.tv/TWC today to order your kit and save an additional 15% with promo code BADLANDS. That's badlandsmedia.tv/TWC, promo code BADLANDS. Badlanders have set No Bugs Beef on fire. Have you ordered yet? Let's face facts. America's supply chain is going to be increasingly disrupted in the coming months, which means it's not if we'll have a food shortage, it's when. Having enough protein to feed your family for several months is essential for your survival. That's why we've partnered with badlandsmedia.tv/nobugs. They provide sous vide, freeze-dried, all-American beef from ranches in Texas that have never, ever given their cows an mRNA jab. The beef, stored in Mylar bags with oxygen absorbers for maximum shelf life, will stay shelf-stable for more than 10 years without refrigeration and with maximum nutrition and flavor. All you need to do is soak it in water for 15 minutes, and it's ready to eat. These are not typical survival meats. They are premium cuts of ribeye, New York strip, tenderloin, sirloin, and chuck. Get your family ready for the chaos at badlandsmedia.tv/nobugs and use the promo code BADLANDS for an additional 10% off your order. That's badlandsmedia.tv/nobugs, promo code BADLANDS.
So, I mean, I'm working on a book of solutions right now, but I'll just, I'll kind of throw some out for you. Probably the first thing you can do is get yourself organized and find the other liberty lovers that understand, what's going on in your community so that you've got friends and allies and you can keep the local political gang, the local government in check. because you outnumber it either numerically or you've just got the smartest and the intelligentsia. And so it's really, when the intelligentsia of your town or your city, moves, they drag everybody else with you. So, you don't try and win everybody. Just go after the people that are in a position to influence others, the bloggers, the vloggers, the reporters, the professoriate, the business owners, the entrepreneurs, people like that. Use cash. Have a strong liberty group. You can find that through freedom cells. You can, organize meetups. By the way, meetup is censoring political organizations. So there's other alternatives to meetup, but handbills, flyers, start your own liberty group. We're having a conference this weekend in Sedona, sedona.artofliberty.org, where we're going to be teaching people on the live stream how to start and grow a liberty movement in your own community. It's going to have Ernie Hancock, who has probably organized one of the most successful liberty movements in the country. Larkin Rose, Tall Paul is going to be talking about how to get yourself out of the system. Grant Presence is one of the liberty movement's leading artists. He wrote the COVID song Scam, which is probably one of the best, if not the best, takedown of the scam of the COVID anywhere. And there's going to be lots of others, but get a local liberty group, find the people in your community, begin to get yourself organized and begin to lean on the local government to privatize everything that can be privatized. You should spend cash when you can. So when you spend cash, number one, especially with local merchants and buying local and spending with brick and mortar retailers in your area, run by your neighbors and people that where you're going to want to have that lifeline, whether it's the farmer's market or whether it's brick and mortar local retail. When you're spending cash, you're saving that farmer or saving that store owner 1.5% to 2.5% on the sale. At the same time, you're starving the bank of that 1.5% to 2%, and the business owner can keep a little bit more of his money. It doesn't have to go to the lying, thieving, stealing government. And so now he can buy dance lessons for his kids or football or whatever that contributes to the local economy. Know your farmer. So go to the farmer's market. You're going to get a better quality of food, but you can begin to lean on your farmer and say, hey, we don't want you using atrazine. We don't want you using Monsanto. I'm looking for farmers that aren't using atrazine, aren't using Monsanto, and you can begin to vote with your dollars in a way that you can do every single day instead of every 4 years. Those are just a small handful of examples. I could keep going, but I think you kind of know where it goes. I spend goldbacks with the local community. I give them in tips. It's flexible, spendable gold, so that I'm diversifying the merchants that I do business with and my friends and people like that out of rapidly depreciating fiat paper ticket dollars into a currency that has intrinsic value in it, so goldbacks are flexible, spendable gold. Barter with silver when you can. Again, so if you're doing business with the farmer's market and you guys are moving some percentage of your transactions out of the paper dollars into silver or goldbacks, you're improving the survivability of your community in the event of a dollar devaluation or a dollar crisis, which is what Washington seems to be pushing us into. Get yourself prepped up, have 3-6 months, a year of survivable food, and preps in case we do have a dollar devaluation or collapse. Have a community garden, support a community garden, start a community garden. Get your community onto something like Cell 411, which is an app that lets you crowdsource your emergency. So it isn't just the monopoly police that show up. Here in Sedona, we had a a woman that had her leg broken by a police officer in a traffic stop about an expired registration tag. And so it's now to the point where the cops feel that they can do all of this. So you want your friends to show up at the same time. And now there's technology solutions that allow you to just press a button and it broadcasts to your entire friend group and network. Hey, I'm being pulled over by our crooked, police force.
What was the name of that app again?
It's called Cell 411.
Cell 411. Okay.
Cell 411. And all of these solutions are in Government, the Biggest Scam in History Exposed, which you can get at government-scam.com. Most of them, like I said, I'm working on a book of new solutions, so I may have dropped a few that aren't in government, hyphens at government-scam.com. But those are some of my favorites.
Excellent. Yeah, that's all great stuff. I've been scrolling away solutions for years, and everything you said is on my list for sure. I think to add to what you're saying, that there's kind of like two classes of assets I like to think. There's practical survival assets like food, water, shelter, social network, those kind of things. And then there's like governance assets, in the sense that you need a system to manage your trading with people, to manage interacting with people, to solve problems when they happen, to settle this, that's all like the software kind of stuff. Yeah. And that's the stuff that has been systematically stripped from our society, because they don't want us to actually be self-sufficient, learn how to solve problems, communicate with each other without stepping on our toes. They don't want that. So, learning, I think there are three groups of knowledge that is really useful. Learn law, learn what your rights are, learn what other people's rights are, learn how to manage rights, learn how to form a good contract, learn how to maintain trust, learn how to be a good fiduciary, these kind of things. And that means you won't step on other people's toes when you interact with them, and they'll want to keep interacting with you. You need. By
the way, in economics, it's called the discipline of constant dealings. And because people in the marketplace have to deal with each other, on an ongoing basis, it's really not in your interest to lie, cheat, or steal, because once you're identified as a liar, a cheater, or a stealer, then nobody's going to do business with you anymore. And so this is one of the many ways that the market, it's called a market mechanism that provides what you want the government to do. It's being provided for free by the free market. It's called the discipline of constant dealings.
Discipline of constant dealings. I like that. Okay. So yeah, all that stuff. I was going to chuck philosophy and psychology in there, but you guys get the picture. And I think there's a lot that can be done to, at the very least, make your life less costly and reduce disease, frustration, stress by working with other people, because ultimately that's what they don't want. I mean, if you think about what got this country started, it was basically a bunch of homesteader communities that really knew self-governance well and knew how to work with each other well. And they've taken all that away under the promise of going and working in giant factories and these kind of things for all your modern conveniences. Okay, so what about politics? Sometimes when we talk about these issues, especially people who are like really hardcore freedom oriented, they're like, don't vote, get out of politics, don't engage with it at all. Any thoughts on that?
Well, it's funny because I just wrote an article on my Substack at artofliberty.substack.com. And the article is entitled Why and How You Should Help Your Child Steal His Student Government Election. Yeah. And if you'll dig into the important news, it's right there. Click Art of Liberty important news. Up a little. Right there. That one right there.
Yes, got it.
Yeah, that one. Click that. No thanks. Down. Right there. Why and how, it's on the left. You should help your kids steal their student council election. And so the subtitle is, you would be surprised how easy it is, almost as easy as stealing U.S. elections with mail-in ballots and unauditable touchscreen voting machines. And so years ago, in the article, I'll just kind of summarize it for the audience. One of my sons comes to me and tells me that he is wants to run for student government. I think he wanted to run for secretary of the student government at the time. And I kind of laugh and I tell him two stories. And the first story I tell him is about the complete ridiculousness of student government. And so when there's a gentleman by the name of Ed Crane who founded the libertarian think tank, the Cato Institute, and he used to tell this story that I related to my son about running for student government on a platform of eliminating student government. And one of his main points was the absolute ridiculousness of student government. So if you're a student musician or you're a student athlete, okay, you are really a musician and you are really an athlete. You're having to compete against people. You're having to play on stage. You have to be part of the band and everything like that. But student government is a completely made up pretend position. The decisions made by student government, besides kind of, okay, how to spend like a token, pizza budget or, events, like an event budget or something like that. But the decisions of student government, whether at the middle school or the high school or the college level, can be revoked like that, right? I mean, it's just gone. Like, nope, we're not going to do that. And so it's a completely pretend position. The other story that I told my son was when I was in high school, I went to school with Fox political commentator Hal Lambert. And I watched Hal Lambert steal or /rig our high school election, whether he did it consciously or unconsciously, I don't know. But Hal Lambert and I think he was running for secretary too, I think if I remember correctly. But he came in and he brought in a nacho cart with a nacho cheese warmer and a pot, pan of nacho sauce and everything. And he gave away, it had to be 100 plus, things, nachos to the prospective voters. Now, I didn't really understand this dynamic at the time. Years later, I would understood what had happened. But in behavioral psychology, there is a well-known psychological phenomenon known as reciprocity. And so reciprocity is if somebody gives you something, a plate of nachos, candy, something like that, then even if you don't register it consciously, you register subconsciously. It creates a psychological obligation to pay that person back in some way, shape, or form. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, people that understand that, it's very easy to rig elections because you just have to give the voters something, right? And so anyway, Fox political commentator Hal Lambert induces this artificial reciprocity in the student population, whether he did it, like I said, consciously or unconsciously. So anyway, I'm telling my son the story, and all of a sudden I decide I have this epiphany, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to buy my son, son, I'm going to buy you your first election. Me and my son began sitting there plotting how to buy the election, what we're going to give away, and like how we're going to steal this election. And anyway, mom is in the kitchen. Mom comes, running out. She goes, "You will do no such thing. That is the exact wrong message to send a child." To which point I laugh and I go, "No, that's the exact thing you want children to know. You want them to understand how easily the system is rigged, how easy it is to buy an election." And so in the article, I give you 6 other different ways that you could steal a high school election. And I'll just, I'll go through, like a couple of them right now. But like, number one, you just bribe your opponent. So you could spend $25 on posters, but why spend $25 on posters when you might be able to get your opponent to drop out for $25 and then you win the election? You could bribe the teacher counting the votes, as a token, as say, go to them and say, "Hey, I want to just, illustrate this problem with government. So I want to give you a token payment where we're both going to say what had happened, but then the lesson is going to be, look how easy it was to just bribe the person counting the votes." You could have a disparity of campaign funds. And by that, maybe, your opponent's going to spend $25, but, to teach the class a lesson and to illustrate how the banks do it and sovereign governments like Israel that interferes in our elections through AIPAC and spreads money around through political action committees and things like that. You just give your son $300-400 just to like make the point and have him spread it around, have him hire other students as influencers, go get popular kids and say, hey, I'm looking for Instagram. I know you've got an Instagram account. I'm looking for you to be my influencer and everything. And you could start making payments right now. You could buy off specific votes, or you could just buy a gazillion posters, or you could do, a variety of things with that money. So disparity of, campaign, votes is one of those. You could split the vote strategically. And so say you're a boy and your opponent is a girl, you could go and recruit another girl, either paying them or using flattery or something like that to enter the race, knowing that if you pick the right person, they're going to pull a lot of the girl votes away from your opponent. And so now you've just split the vote and you win the election because, you were willing to do something, kind of underhanded to win. You could stuff the ballot box. So like, let's say you got 2 or 3, 4 friends in class. If all of y'all went up to the ballot box and palmed an extra 3 or 4 votes for you, okay, you could stuff the ballot box. Those are a couple more. I mentioned blackmail and political assassination in the article, not suggesting that people do it, but just so that kids understand that that's how the big boys do it, and understand that those are, that there's many historical examples where those have been used to steal elections or to influence the outcome of elections. And so you got to understand that. That's one of the things that you need to understand. And then the other thing that's in the article that you've already kind of skipped over is I kind of break down how the big boys steal it in the United States and the way that they're stealing it in the United States. And here's the two videos in the article. Is they're stealing it, number one, through unauditable black box, frequently touch screen voting machines that have no audit trail, where the final vote tally can be affected by jiggering with what's called the central tabulator. Mm-hmm. So you can go into the back door of these election softwares and you can change the outcome. It's called fraction magic. This is a video of an election commissioner in Shelby County, Tennessee, explaining how he was able to do it using, to make a point like, look, I'm showing you how easy it is for me as an election commissioner to reach in here and hijack this so that people know that this is going on and this is how they're stealing elections. Or the video right under it is the trailer from something called 2000 Mules, which was a documentary that exposed the shenanigans that went on in the 2020 election, where because of the COVID, we have to have mail-in ballots. And once you have mail-in ballots, there's nobody checking IDs at the door, and anybody can show up at a ballot drop box with thousands of mail-in ballots, or, the election commissioner could have, could be in on it. It could produce a bag of mail-in ballots. And so right now, our elections are completely insecure. They're completely designed to be rigged. They're being rigged openly. It's like it's obvious that they're being rigged. So that's how the big boys. So the final thing that's kind of in the article is how the big boys do it, with 2 concrete examples full of whistleblowers and evidence of chicanery in the elections. And so at the end of the day, the message is, and by the way, so the other thing I say in the article is, after you steal the election, you go to your class and you say, hey, I want to let you know what I did. I just stole this election because I wanted people to understand what a dumb idea government is, how easily it is to steal these elections, how easy it is to rig an election. And so I don't believe that government is legitimate, desirable, or necessary. But the main thing that I'm here to, I'm not going to be the president. I'm renouncing my seat. But everybody here needs to understand how easy it was for me to rig this election.
That's fantastic. I mean, getting people to acknowledge these things is really challenging because, as I've discovered, there's no standard in mind.
Mhm.
You know, when it comes to sports, as an analogy I like to use, it's if I was to show you some examples of cheating in baseball, anyone who knew the sport would probably be able to tell exactly what was going on very quickly.
Mhm.
But if I showed you an election, most people would have no idea. What do you mean stuffing ballot boxes isn't a good idea? What do you mean having voter rolls with dead voters on there isn't a good idea? You know, there's no standard, and because there's no standard, there's no clear way to discern a good election from a bad election. But this, what you just did here, this is brilliant. It makes it very easy. It puts into a frame that people can quickly and easily understand. And you get your kids anchored in there too to really encourage people to get into it.
Mhm.
I love it. That's a great idea. Fantastic.
Yeah, it's been a very popular article. It's getting shared around a lot.
Nice, awesome. Well, okay. So last question I had for you: what do you think about Donald Trump and what he's doing?
I think he's in on it, 100%, 100%. So I think the whole thing is political theater. I think every single year it's a rigged election. It's a fake selection. Both candidates are essentially in on it. It's the government and the media working together to make sure that they control the outcome of no matter how the outcome of the election ends up, they are controlling the winner. If you really examine the policies of Donald Trump versus the policies of Joe Biden, they were 100% aligned on everything important to the banker, from confiscatory taxation to fractional reserve banking to bailouts to stimulus. Donald Trump was involved in Operation Warp Speed. He tricked people into taking the bioweapon known as the COVID-19 vaccine. He put Wilbur Marshall, who did his workout at the Rothschild. So Wilbur Marshall, who was the Secretary of Commerce, was the Rothschild banker that did Donald Trump's workout when Donald Trump went bankrupt and kept Donald Trump in business. And so the Rothschilds had them in their pocket, ever since then. And he reciprocated by putting their quote unquote former agent in as Secretary of Commerce. He put in Goldman Sachs banker at Treasury. He went along with the scam of lockdowns. He's 100% in on it. He's an actor. He's acting. They're both in on it.
Right on. All right. Cool. Well, all right, everybody. So there we go. I have links in the description for everything. So all the great books. I strongly suggest you guys check out the website. There's amazing information on there. This is really good stuff to know and have handy because there's a lot of threads to untangle here. And getting granular knowledge is really important. Is there anything you wanted to leave our audience with? I know you got the event coming up. Is there any future events you want to talk about, anything like that?
No, I mean, the main thing is we're at artofliberty.org. If you want to follow our work, we do something called 5 Meme Friday, where we send out 5 hysterical liberty memes along with kind of censored videos and the best of the alternative media. And that's on Substack. You can either sign up at artofliberty.org or at our Substack at artofliberty.substack.com. If you want to get the book Government, the Biggest Scam in History, that really is the starting point. If these ideas are new to you and you really want to understand the playbook of how government tricks people into something that's against their interest, that's at government-scam.com. The book is selling legitimately virally, and we've been selling the book to over 25 plus countries, where people have been frequently paying more than the cost of the book in postage and handling. So that's one of the things we're kind of proud of as well. We're working on getting some distribution internationally, so people don't have to pay these crazy government postal rates. So that's those are my 3 best URLs.
Excellent. All right. Well, hey, thanks so much for coming on. Really appreciate it, and I'd love to have you on again in the future.
Yeah, thanks for doing what you do. We're going to win this thing.